When things went bad, he ran. He ran and he fled the country. Not that I'm trying to call him a coward or a bad, but he fled at the first sign of trouble. And he also fled because he tried to nationalize the oil. He had begot and became very arrogant and very, I would say, pageantry-ish for what some people in Iran felt was unflattering. For what was considered glory days for some Iranians wasn't so glory days for people who didn't have as much. There were people that were struggling, and he would run these massive parades and events, and it made people feel like it was a westernized show of things that didn't quite match up with morals and values. It was a westernized influence of trying to present the regalness of what would be considered privilege to a Western sense. And so that was a huge disconnect with his people while he was underneath and ruling the country. 20 years of movie theaters and westernized culture, it seems like it's almost affected in Iran in a way where people will not acknowledge history that took place before the last Shah was in power. A lot of Iranians that I've spoken to outside of the country don't even recognize Mossadegh and what he cared about and what he tried to contribute to his people in the coup that took place in 1953. Another great documentary to check out is one called Coup 53, which explains about Mossadegh's connection to Iran. Also with Mossadegh, it is rumored he had family that was based in Zanzibar, in Tanzania, in Africa, and that was his connection to Africa as well, which goes back to Shirazi people and their unique stamp on, I would say, the world, and also for Africa because it's just a different part of Iranian history that's not covered. So what I'm trying to say is, all of these topics are very challenging to discuss with Iranians because you can't come to a logical conclusion when you omit parts of history that have taken place because you favor one leader over another. And I think that's very detrimental and almost devastating to understand. You won't be able to come to a consensus unless you can realize the full frame picture that you're looking at. That picture that you're looking at is that history is valid. You cannot omit history. If you're sitting in the middle of a forest and you're trying to give directions, you're not able to give directions unless you know where you came from. Knowing where you came from doesn't mean you can skip over certain steps you didn't like to know how you got and what led you to this point, to understand what led Iranians to this point in their history. So I would suggest to Iranian people in a very significant way, if you can, acknowledge the history of your country in its entirety. Be willing to accept the US and British involvement in your country. This is no different from British, French, American, and Russian involvement in breaking up the tribes in the Middle East, the Arab tribes that all didn't have these borders. They didn't have Syria, they didn't have Yemen. All these borders that were broken up and put into place after European influence of colonization that had taken place. And be willing to admit, that there was outside influence. And this outside influence, it's valid to examine what that means. Is it really your people that is leading the forefront of your country? Or is it really outside entities running what they call disinformation or misinformation? Essentially, those words are new words for propaganda. propaganda has been changed into buzzwords of disinformation and misinformation. But who's the biggest propagator of disinformation or misinformation? Most of the time, it can be one's government. And we can look back and view that based around the pandemic and different instructions that we were given. Wear one mask, wear two masks. The vaccine will protect you from catching COVID. Now, no, actually it won't protect you from catching COVID. Oh, it's got a 90% safety rate. Oh, no, now it's a 70% safety rate. Oh, now it's a 40% safety rate. Maybe you go get a booster. So, you know, all of these things are valid, that you have to hold your government accountable for some of the things that they say. But what I want to explain to you about Iran's government is that it's gone through a number of changes. And of course, police brutality is unacceptable. Obviously, America has a huge hypocrisy when it comes to that, which also the current leader of Iran highlighted as well with Khamenei. But, you know, police brutality and police corruption is international. You can see that right now with maybe the likes of what's happening in Romania with Andrew Tate.
So why is society doing this to men and women?
If you're breaking down the home, the best and quickest way to do that is attacking the woman. And there's more money in lonely, sad women. We consume everything. So if I get to a certain age and I'm not married, I'm going to be more likely to be on prescription drugs. I'm going to be more likely to turn to surgery. I'm going to be more likely to just indulge. Whereas when you have a purpose, those things all take a back burner. So that's why I think it's completely designed to make more money and to destroy the home and make people dependent on, then your God becomes social media. When you don't have a God and when you don't have a stable home, your God becomes society. The laws determine your morality. And the quicker they can get you to believe that God doesn't exist and the law is your source of morality, the quicker they can control you.
When you listen to his long-form content, do you find him to be more of a positive influence than a negative? Or how do you wind up feeling in terms of his influence on men and society at large? Positive or negative?
Absolute net positive. I don't see anything that's a net negative. I see all of the net positive for him. For getting men to get in shape. You kidding me? Our testosterone level has dropped since 1980. Every year our testosterone levels dropped 1% for that age category. Not every year like when I'm 35, then 36, 37. Every year the average male's testosterone level has dropped. Our PSI, okay, on how strength or grip strength is, it's dropped from 1985. It was at 116. Right now it's 96. For women, it's gone from 79 to 98. How's that even possible? Women have stronger grip strength than men in many cases. How is that even possible? How's that even happening?
I think Andrew is amazing for men. I think right now there are no male role models. Of course, there's Jordan Peterson, who's amazing, but he's not going to relate to the young boys. So I think he's absolutely amazing. The tons of messages that I've received from young boys just saying thank you so much for supporting him. He's saved my life. He's done all these amazing things. And I think he might be extreme to some standards. However, he's allowing the pendulum to move the other way. Society went so the other way. It went so liberal and so woke that we actually need a crazy character like Andrew to bring us back to normality. And I think even he would admit, hopefully men will end somewhere in the middle, more to his side obviously, but end somewhere in the middle.
Because young people look up to philosophers, to influencers about what it means to be a man. They look up to Jordan Peterson, they look up to Andrew Tate, they looked up to others. What does it mean to be a good man in the society?
Some people, in order to make a change in their life, need someone who they can look up to. Andrew Tate would encourage you to go reach for the stars, I guess. Men don't have a lot of strong role models, big male presences in their life who can serve as a proper example. There's certainly a need for somebody kind of to speak to a younger generation.
And then you have young people who are sitting there broke with big dreams. They need the mentors. They need somebody to inspire them. You have to realize there needs to be institutions or people or influencers that help inspire. You were a member of Hustlers University. So
yeah, I joined. I became a hustler. That's in large part due to why I'm so successful is because of my Hustler University membership. What Andrew Tate is selling is not multi-level marketing. There's several rooms and each one is a different field of making money. E-commerce, trading, cryptocurrency, fulfillment by Amazon, copywriting.
Is the Hustler University still operating?
I think they've rebranded it.
The real world.ai.
People underestimate how important influence is. The war in Ukraine and Russia right now is what? People are dying. Machines of war are out in a field somewhere, blowing people to smithereens. So that one country can get influence over land. So to say, this area uses this currency, and you read our newspaper, we have influence. Influence is the bottom line of everything. It always has been. That's what wars are fought for. It's what the media machine exists for. It's why the YouTube algorithms are rigged. It's why elections are fucking... I don't want to get killed. It's why elections are very fair. It's all influence.
You can see that with what's happened in the United States, and they're still releasing videos of African Americans being attacked, but they haven't made a national apology to maybe put a consciousness in the American public as a whole to be mindful of how we treat each other. And that's not by accident, that they're not aware that they could do that. They could apologize as a country, and it might make some conscious and personal change among the people. But with Iran and what's going on, and with Mahsa Amini, police brutality is unacceptable, but unfortunate. It's a part of almost every police department globally. Police in Britain and also in London, and also in the United States, in Boston. The very first modern police departments in Boston and London were formed in 1830. And they were formed not to protect the community. Police forces were established, what they called during the Industrial Revolution. For some people, they might call that the industrial exploitation. Modern police forces were formed to essentially put a stop to unions from being formed. These corporations that were being formed out of industrial revolutions had these massive factories, and in order to protect their factories that were so huge, and they had so many workers working off assembly lines, in order to manage it, the corporations got fed up and they wanted to form police forces to absolve themselves of having to manage all of these workers, potentially forming unions and protesting. What the job of the police force was to do was they created a class issue, and they created different classes, and essentially they needed to create an underclass. These underclass were considered either poor migrants, poor drunkards, or just immigrants, which I said earlier as migrants. But most of those categories that were deemed underclass in those brackets were all the same workers that were working in these factories. So police were made and purposely intentionally protect commercial interests. Police were never formed, modern day police, to protect the community. You might see that slapped on the side of a police car, that it's for the community and we're here to protect and serve. But police, when you see a protest going on, you see what their true intentions are. Their true intentions are to protect commercial interest from their buildings being harmed. So if it comes down to citizens or corporations, you will find out very fast that the police isn't necessarily there for the community. And you can even address that in your local country for the most part. Say in maybe perhaps where I'm located in New Zealand or in Australia. Police show up after the fact of a crime. They're not there for crime prevention. They show up after a crime has actually been committed. In New Zealand specifically, if it gets bad, that's the only time that they turn up, once an assault or some sort of crime has taken place. Now, if you call them prior and you say someone appears to be violent, they may not show up at all, which is unfortunate, but they're there almost to just show up, like I said, after the fact, which essentially makes them higher paid security guards. They're not actually there for crime prevention. So what I'm saying to you is that that's a global problem with police force. And if you want true change, let that change come from within Iran, for the Iranian people to discuss that. Now, whether that's best done through protest, is questionable. Today, modern day protests are essentially exploitation, things that take place for corporations to monetize their profits off of. So they'll support social movements. Corporations co-opt social movements, whether that's Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ rights, gender, women's rights. And a lot of this is done now for ESG, which is economic social governance, which is essentially it's a corporate social credit score that corporations are meant to withhold. So you go into corporate buildings and you see genderless bathrooms in a Western country. It's not because there's genuine change coming through. It's because it's socially engineered, it's manufactured, and it's being done so that these corporations can be able to borrow more money because they're beholden to companies, say, like BlackRock, which enforces ESG in the World Economic Forum. So it's not coming from a very genuine place, down to movies and television with this quote unquote diversity, where they're falsely making the world homogenous, and race swapping, which is causing social conflict, and it keeps the general public busy going, why is this happening? Why is there an African Ariel? And these politicians are able to pass policies while we're too caught up in the distractions.
Look at this. Right-wingers melt down over satanic Pfizer-sponsored Grammys. I almost feel like this is too on the nose. I almost feel like we're all being played against each other, while these people are like just finding ways to control us and control all the money. I feel like this is all fake. I know it's real. I know that was a real song, and I know that's a real commercial afterwards, but it just seems so stupid. Someone in the World Economic Forum, some fucking billionaire that's running the world's like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get these people fighting while I institute some sort of a gigantic global social credit score system. If AI is real already, if artificial intelligence is real already and it's manipulating us, that's how it manipulates us. Just get us to fight over the dumbest shit.
Which is why I think Andrew Tate has become such an enormous threat to the system. Yes. This guy is in the way of really bad people who recognize that it's an absolute necessity to weaken men to do what they want to do. Because who's going to be on the front lines of saying, no, you're not going to take my property? I'm not putting my child into an indoctrination camp. That's going to be the man. It's not going to be the woman in that house. So they need those feminized men who are going to, oh, really? Maybe I can line up for another 6 vaccine. You know, like that nonsense is what they need.
I'll tell you something about like the whole woke ideology is that it's based around this idea of trying to make everybody equal. And in nature, things are unequal. Some people are 6'3", some people are 5'10". Nature isn't fair, okay? So there's never going to be perfect equality. And the only way you can make people truly equal is by dragging somebody else down to your level.
Oh my gosh, so that 4 years from 2016 to 2020, it was a complete madness. I became very pessimistic about the Western world after university, because literally in these humanity classes, even the economics, I was studying economics for 2 years and later human rights. The professor would send me the emails. Oh, this class we're gonna cover this. If it triggers you, you don't have to come to the class or don't even do the reading. I'm a rape survivor. I'm a slave. I've gone through so many things, and they say, oh, this can trigger the rape. This can trigger this, and then before the class they say, let's go through what do you want to be called, your pronouns. And my English is not that good. I sometimes mistakenly call him or she, and then they started asking me to say they, and then I don't know how to incorporate in my English that pronoun properly. And it made me so nervous to talk in the classroom. And one day I got into a fight with my professor. She was saying, the fact that you're letting men holding door for you is you are giving in to their overpowering you. And I was like, no, isn't it kindness? Is it decency? I hold the door for people too. It's not like I'm trying to signal that I'm powerful than you. And she was like, Yomi, you're so brainwashed from North Korea. And I was a scenario, of course my GPA is gonna be affected, and it's like, okay, I gotta really shut up. I gotta try to do my best to get a Korea. Like, and I was a scenario, of course my GPA is gonna be affected, and it's like, okay, I gotta really shut up. I gotta try to do my best to get a good GPA. So that 4 years, I learned to censor myself all over again.
Give them a little bit of Starbucks, give them a little TV programming, tell a vision, and keep them busy. So you need to be privy to know how the world works, and that there's agendas going on all around, and Iran in general has been notoriously exploited. So my wish and desire for the Iranian people is that true change comes from within your people, not from the help of an outside entity who may not have your best interest in mind, and you will become an indentured servant to whoever you're asking for help from. You want true freedom. True freedom comes from within. It comes from your own people finding your own independence. And I would ask for Iranians to have the privilege of, or perceived privilege, to be in a Western country, to think more kindly of your own people, and not be so quick to not only denounce Iran without factoring out how Iran has gone through so much change from outside forces, but not try to hinder the Iranians in the country from feeling like they're missing out. Your country and your culture has privilege of a beautiful history, and that has credence to it. And it's not something to omit because you've assimilated to a Western country where you've come. Some Iranians go into these Western countries and they leave Iran because they felt that their people were being prejudged or abused or harassed or judged upon or even killed. And so they flee Iran, and sometimes they go into a foreign country and have that same bias and that same hesitation and same prejudice that they receive. They purport that out on other ethnic groups when they get into these Western countries. I've had a unique interaction between, like I said, various types of Iranians. The biggest, I would say, group that I've had the most challenge with as far as Iranians has been Baha'is. And Baha'is it was pretty shocking to me, because I don't want to paint all of them in a quick brush, but I felt that they tended towards me to be the most judgmental about me and about other people that weren't a part of their quote unquote group. And almost every religion can be that way. You can get involved and get a religious gang mentality of, we're here, they're there, we're cleaner, they're not, and lose your humanity to connect with people and understand that we all have privileges and differences, and we all have a beautiful history and things that we can contribute to each other. We all can learn from each other and exchange personal development, hence why I'm speaking about the subject matter. And I could not care. I could look at this as just, oh, this is Iranians' problems, and this is just their people's problems. But it's not only for the fact that I have a half Iranian son, but this has been in my heart prior to my son being president, that I've cared about the globe from a very pure purpose. And I would say it's because African Americans face so much persecution in our own country that we can't even afford to be prejudiced towards other people. We're almost very opening to almost everyone, because we have a lot to learn, and we had a lot to learn being stripped of our identity, our connection to Africa, our native tongue, our spirituality, our connection with earth and the soil. And so we're often assembly line African Americans. So our people are still kind of lost and trying to find our way. So I've always cared to want to learn about other cultures specifically. And so I hope people don't take this in offense of me taking the time to speak about this, but I thought it was very important that I discuss this, because everything that happens on this planet, we're all affected. Whether that's what's going on in Ukraine, with Russia and the United States. Russia has not expanded towards the United States or towards NATO. NATO has expanded towards their border. Russia's only doing what any sovereign country would do, which is protect your border. This is no different from if Russia wants to form an alliance with China and build bases, and not just China, but make an alliance with Mexico and build bases on the border of Mexico.
И здесь опять лгут постоянно, извращают исторические факты, не прекращают нападки на нашу культуру, на русскую православную церковь, другие традиционные религиозные организации нашей страны. Посмотрите, что они делают со своими собственными народами. Разрушение семьи, культурной и национальной идентичности, извращение, издевательства над детьми вплоть до педофилии объявляются нормой их жизни. А священнослужители, священников принуждают благословлять однополые браки. Да Бог с ними, пускай что хотят, то и делают. Что здесь хочется сказать? Взрослые люди имеют право жить, как хотят. Мы к этому так и относились в России, и всегда к этому будем так относиться. Никто в частную жизнь не вторгается, и мы не собираемся этого делать. Но хочется им сказать, ну посмотрите, извините меня, священные писания, главные книги всех других мировых религий. Там все сказано, в том числе то, что семья – это союз мужчины и женщины. Но и эти священные тексты подвергаются сейчас сомнению. Но вот, как стало известно, англиканская церковь, например, планирует, правда, пока только еще, рассмотреть идею гендерно-нейтрального Бога. Что скажешь? Прости, Господи, не ведают, что творят. Миллионы людей на Западе понимают, что их ведут к настоящей духовной катастрофе. Элиты, ну, прямо надо сказать, просто сходят с ума, и это, похоже, уже не лечится. Но это их проблемы, как я уже сказал, а мы обязаны защитить наших детей. И мы сделаем это, защитим наших детей от деградации и вырождения.
Hey guys, if you want to watch more clips, click here.
And if you want to watch the full podcast, click right here.